My wife has been dropping hints that it's about time to redo our bedroom, and we've already planned out everything we want to do, but we haven't talked about when we're going to do it. But she's out of town for the weekend, so I decided I'm going to see how much I can get done while she's gone, but realistically she's going to come home to a massive mess. Either way, we got to start eventually. All right, let's jump into it. So this is a tour of our bedroom, and it's not very big. Basically, we have 3 windows on this side. We have a king-size bed with a bed frame, which she actually recently purchased. We have some double doors into a closet. And then on this wall, we have our dresser and a barn door that goes into the bathroom. So the first thing we already talked about is going to be a feature wall here with a green wall that we're going to do to match some of the other rooms in the house that will have some lights on it and a little bit of texture to it, but be very open. We did try actually buying and putting a big photo over here, but we just found it was way too much clutter, way too much going on. So that'll be that. We're actually shooting this little sequence because we weren't supposed to have this bed frame yet, and she went and bought the bed frame, so we now have a bed frame apparently. We have our white nightstands that we're not sure what we're going to do with yet. The walls are going to be some kind of cream color. Right now our walls are all purple. We want to get rid of that, so we're going to do some kind of cream color here. We're looking at a couple of different ones right now. Still got to pick the final one. And with our closet, I have to repaint the doors, redo all the trim in the entire room, and also redo the hardware as well, and move them from here to over here where there's a little more solid connection. So lots to do in this room. Don't know if I'm going to get it done this weekend, but I want to see if I can do a Home Depot run tonight for the trim and for the electrical. So the first things I got to figure out is how much trim I'm going to need to do this room. So I'll figure out that roughly. Then after that, we can start to figure out the electrical as well to get some supplies. Now I'm going to figure out all that off camera, but let's jump into a little grabbing supplies montage. What do you think? Happy?
Yeah. Do they have the knob?
No. So it's 8 p.m. Saturday night. I got one more day before Kristen gets back. So my goal tonight is to take all the trim off all the walls in here, get it all numbered, and bring it downstairs. And that way I can basically use each piece of trim as a template for the new piece. And I'm hoping by doing it that way, it'll be faster than I've done in the past, which is measuring, recutting, and that kind of thing. So there'll be a couple pieces on here that I have to mark an asterisk because they're going to fit slightly different now with the thicker trim. But I'm just gonna go around the room, number every piece. And all I need for that is my little trim puller. This just goes flat against the wall, and that way it can't kind of wreck your drywall, which is great. Hammer, and then Sharpie to number it all. Let's start going. Now this tool I'm using here is called a trim puller, and the reason I actually like it so much is because you can basically place it against the drywall and it does no damage. So sometimes you see people use like putty knives, or you see them use pry bars and they go right through the drywall really easy. But with this, there's zero damage done. I'll have a link to it down below if you want to pick one up for yourself. Best tool I have for trimming. Okay, So the first thing I'm going to do for this is paint the trim. That's the goal for the weekend, is just to get the trim on. So in the past when I've done trim, I've done it where I have put all the trim in place and then I painted it in position. That's okay, but it kind of is tough with carpet. I tried cutting it all, then painting it, and then just installing it. That was a little bit of a pain because I had to do touch-ups anyways, and painting all these really small pieces just sucked, so not doing that. This time I'm going to paint all the trim in the longest sections I can because I think that'll be the easiest, and to make it hopefully even easier, bought a sprayer. I've had a really shitty sprayer before, the Wagner kind of handheld one, and I've upgraded to the Control Pro 130, so hopefully that makes it a lot faster. All I'm going to do here is get it primed. I'm just using a basic super paint trim paint here. And let's see if I can crank this out really fast. Now I'm already behind because that barn door that I saw yesterday, that black, I actually went back this morning and I was able to get a discount on it because there was some nicks. So I got it down $50 to $150, and our old door actually just sold for $180. So I've been kind of doing this flip flop all morning. So getting a little late start today to this, but let's see if this works. Sprayed into here first, let's see. Oh, look at that. Oh, that's sick. So I'm gonna start at the back. Some ugly spots. Just gonna try and brush in a bit. All right, so when it's clogged, you rotate it, unclog it, rotate it back. Let's see if that worked. That worked like a charm. Let's go. So I didn't plan for that to be that quick. I thought this was still gonna take me a half hour, an hour to get all this done, but I have all of the trim painted. There's overspray to the thing, but zero overspray anywhere else. 5 minutes of setup, 5 minutes of spray, and it's done. All right, we're prepped. Let's just go here. So we'll go from there to there all the way. Done. All right, let's let that dry. Not bad, it'll flatten out. We'll come back and we'll do these ones. All right, check it out. Trim off the windows. This is 3. So they just pop off like this. 4, 5. This makes it 7. Okay, so we got this piece. And we'll come back for that one because it's a big one. Look at this itty bitty one here. 8, 9. So this one we will call closet left, closet right, which we actually don't need, and closet right. We shouldn't need these because it's a door frame, they're all the exact same size. Now all the door frames should be, I think, 81, so I actually don't need to save any of these. I can just cut them to the appropriate size, which is great. I can just take a separate pile directly right outside. Okay, so here's the plan. I basically have all my trim stored over there, and with it, it's already all labeled, and so I know which pieces come out of which pieces of the trim because I basically figured out the math when I figured out how many boards I would need. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take one of these pieces from upstairs that I labeled, and I'm gonna use that as a template on the piece. And then after I basically use the template, I'm going to cut it in half and just discard it here. And I think this should work.
Now the reality is this worked, but really not as well as I was hoping it would. Honestly, especially bringing all this trim all the way downstairs from the top floor of my house to the bottom floor, it was just way more work than I wanted to do here, and I should have just thrown it all in the garbage and just took measurements like I normally would. So I like where I was going with it, but really just not useful. Now after that, I started to attach all the trim to the walls, and basically what I'm doing is I'm attaching it to the studs, and I'm only putting it on the top third of the trim, and that way I don't have to do any touch-up paint closer to the carpet. So I only put nails in the studs on the top part of it. I push them all in, that way they're flat, and that way I just got to come back with my DryDex, do a little bit of fill, although this one here I made it a little too tight and I got it jammed, and then I broke it trying to get it out, and now I'm pissed. But I basically had to go around hammering a bunch of the different nails here, and then I went over top with the headers. Now the headers, they are pretty much a 3/4 inch overhang on each side, and that's what I'm measuring here, but all that matters is it's centered. If it's a 1/2 inch or if it's 5/8, it doesn't really matter. Just make sure it's centered on that door frame. So I have a little more give with this style of trim, which is why I really like it. Speeds things up. You don't have to worry about having really clean, crisp miters. Now, after I got all the trim installed, the next thing I had to tackle was the old door frame here. So essentially what the previous owners did is there was a door on here that went into the bathroom, but they took off that door. As you can see, they basically had the stops on here and they just left it as an opening. Now, this is a bathroom and we didn't want to just leave it as an opening, so we put our barn door over top of this. But we wanted to make it actually look like it was intentional now and get rid of everything what the old door jamb had. So that meant removing the stops from the inside, taking all the old material off here and giving it a nice flat paintable surface, and then also going back over with Bondo, which we'll do later, and filling in on the hinge locations and the other parts.
Okay, so today is Sunday, and so I've kind of just done a bunch of really small tasks around here, kind of just clean things up a little bit. So I had to replace some casing that didn't fit quite right, so I just painted that on the spot. I did that today. I cleaned up and redid some of these holes on the top here, like I kind of got rid of some of the loose paint, countersunk some of these screws to make it easier for them to be filled after the fact. I took off the door jamb on the inside of this, which I thought was going to be a lot of work to scrape sand, Bondo, and redo that whole door jamb on the inside, but it actually came off in like this super satisfying pieces, and because of that, all I have to do is basically Bondo in where the hinges used to be, and like it's ready to go. And the MDF that's underneath there is 30 years old but untouched and in like perfect condition, so that's gonna be super easy to paint. So all I want to do tonight is I want to experiment. I've never used Bondo before. Oh, I did one more thing. Took off all the hinges. I take off all the nameplates, all the plates for all the outlets, the light bulbs, all that kind of stuff, and I just always put those in a bin on the side, and that way I can find all that stuff after. And all I want to do now is I'm going to try Bondo for the first time, and I'm going to Bondo where all the hinges used to be to make the door jamb smooth, where the lock used to be, and then if I have any Bondo left over, I'm going to fill in all the miters on the windows, because some of them are a little looser than I want. Yeah, let's try some with Bondo. I've never tried this before. So I've never worked with Bondo before, so this is going to be a new experience for me. So with the Bondo, I have to take this kind of cover off of it. Okay. And then what do I got in here? I get the Bondo, I get this like metal mesh. That stuff is already stinky, holy shit, I did not know. Okay, so we have the metal mesh, and then there should be a little spreader on the inside here, but I'm not quite sure how to get this thing out. Why did they do this? Oh, they put a freaking staple. Metal mesh, which I'm not gonna need. Throw that in here for now. Okay, now it's actually getting stinky, so I'm gonna throw my mask on. So they said for a golf ball size piece of this, you put a 3 centimeter line of the cream mixed together, that gives you your hardness. So I'm gonna try mixing that up now. Mask is going on. All right, so golf ball, I have 2 hinges. I think I need 2 golf balls. Let's go 3 golf balls to be safe. 3 golf balls. This is so much stinkier than I thought it was gonna be. All right, we're just gonna clean this up quick, get this lid back on. Okay, now 3 centimeter lines. 1, 2, 3, a little extra. Okay, let's get this in this container resealed. Now, mix it together. This little spreader is useless. This thing is way too small. Use a stir stick maybe, because this works any better. Okay, I have to work quicker than I thought. I mixed up way too much. Get it over top. That's set up in like minutes. I didn't expect that.
Now, I went back and finished all that Bondo work, but honestly, I don't think I'm going to be using Bondo much in the future. It was so stinky. It basically stunk out our bedroom for the night, and we had to sleep somewhere else with fans with our window open in the winter. So that was a terrible idea. I did not do enough research on Bondo before I got into it, but after that, I kind of just called it a night, and then the next morning, I went back with my DryDex and filled in any little gaps I had, any little issues in the drywall, and then all the nail holes. So I sunk all the nails in, and then I go back with my DryDex, my little putty knife, and just fill everything in. You can put on as thick as you need right now. That way you know where it is when it's sandable. Sometimes I actually found out if I put it too thin, I would totally miss it when I'd go back and sand, even if I did like these little touch-up spots. So for me, I found better to put it on thick, and that way I know exactly where it is to sand, and I can get it exactly the way I need. Okay, so it's Saturday, and I basically picked away at a bunch of small stuff over the week, just at nights when I had some free time. So the first thing I did is I went around and I filled all the little nail holes. So you can see I just filled them with a little bit of DryDex, and I went around and I filled all those. So those are ready to be sanded, and then do the final coat of paint on that. I fixed any nail holes as well. We have this done. You can also see that the closet doors are off, and that is because I just took the closet doors downstairs, and we're going to paint the closet doors and put new hardware on them and fill the old holes where the hardware was with Bondo. So we're gonna do that right after this. We have all the trim. The trim is all on. Some of the gaps are gonna need to be filled with some caulk, like this one, little gap there. We're gonna have to go around and fix some of that kind of stuff. If we go over here, I fixed the barn door. I filled all the holes for where the ledger board or the header is gonna go for the barn door to attach. And after that, I went and I tried my hand with Bondo for the first time. So I basically mixed up some Bondo. I filled in all these holes. So I did the original hinge location there. I did the other hinge location there.
and then I also did where the latch was on the door before, so I'm gonna have to sand all this down. I do not recommend working with Bondo, or at least knowing how bad it smells. That was terrible. Then I used some of the Bondo on some of the gaps and some of the miters. So you can see just a little bit of Bondo there, a little bit on some of the other ones here, and went around and did that. So the next step is gonna be closet doors. Let's do that next. Okay, so the process for sanding the doors is pretty simple. I have 3 doors to do today. I have to do the 2 bifold doors in the closet, and I'm also gonna do the bifold door at the front door, because I might as well do them at the same time. Essentially, what we have to do are 3 different things. The first one we have to do is sand it all down. So we'll sand it with 150. It is a latex door. This is not oil-based before, so it is fine to just sand and then respray another coat on it. I've done other doors in my house already, so that's how I know that. So I'm basically just going to sand the entire door down, break all the edges with a sanding sponge to get inside all of the grooves. And then after I'm done that, I have it basically all sanded. I have to prime to make it a little more even and fill these holes where the old handles used to be. So I gotta fill those with Bondo, and then after I fill those, so these are the new door handles. So basically, I have these, I have the screws, and then instead of them being in the center like this, we're gonna move them to half on here. We have 2 threads on this one, so I'd like to get that through there, like so. And I think it'd look a little better. I think if they're in the middle, it looks a little bit odd. I don't love that. So I'm gonna move them to more like a traditional door, which would be somewhere over on this side. Maybe like split this, something like that maybe. So yeah, we'll replace those, do that. I don't know if this is a tip helpful or not, but you should always, if you are gonna plan on redoing a lot of things in your house, make sure if you're buying the hardware, buy everything at once. If you're buying it on Amazon, it gets discontinued and moves so fast. So I have, for every door and everything in my house, I have every door and everything. And that way, if it got discontinued on Amazon, I still have it. So that's the plan. All I gotta do is start sanding.
Now, one mistake I actually made on these is sanding through the paint down to the MDF, and if you do that, it's just going to give you a different finish, so it's not going to really look consistent on the door. See everywhere it's brown here? You actually don't want that. You just want to scuff the paint and not go through it like I did. So again, I thought I was doing it because it looked right, looked more sanded, but reality is it actually made it harder for me to paint.
We're gonna try filling basically all the holes in all the doors where the hardware used to be. And my idea is going to be that we're gonna fill it with spray foam from the inside, and then we can use that spray foam as essentially a backer material, so that way we can add like some DryDex over top and then recreate the wood lines within that. So that's kind of my plan here. So I want to start by filling this with a spray foam and see how that goes. Okay, so while the foam dries that I'm doing on this, it is already getting dark outside. If it's only like 4:15, I need to get all of the trim upstairs sanded while I still have some natural light to make that easier. So I'm going to quickly grab my shop vac, grab my hose and my sander, and run upstairs and just like see if I can sand it all in like 15 minutes. Let's do that quick.
Now, if you plan on doing any sanding in any kind of room you frequently are in, you are going to want to hook up some kind of vacuum to your sander. This is our bathroom. There was Bondo, there was drywall dust everywhere. So every time I sanded, I made sure I hooked up my vacuum to it, and that just keeps it cleaner. When you're trying to go to bed and you pick up your bed sheets and there's dust on them, it absolutely sucks. So that is all done. Everything upstairs is sanded. I can jump back over to this. First off, I have to clean off all the foam that kind of got everywhere. This bit here. Okay, so now I have to essentially dig this out. Now that there's a little cavity I can fill, I can essentially, I think this is gonna work. I really don't know, but I don't know why I wouldn't. I'm just gonna take some DryDex, fill this up now. The thing I don't want to happen is I don't want these grooves filled, because I'm gonna lose my wood grain. So I think that's gonna work. I'm literally just gonna, in case it shrinks, let that dry, move on to the next. Now this kind of worked. The only issue was the foam was a little less dense than I thought. So yes, the patch worked, but if anyone ever presses on this, it's gonna break it so fast. So kind of a good idea, but not my best. So I just finished sanding it, and now I'm gonna take the existing lines that are in from the DryDex, and I'm just gonna carve them back in, and hopefully makes it look like wood grain is still there.
I'm a little worried about some of this Bondo here bleeding through the paint. So I think I'm just gonna hit it with a quick coat of some primer, make sure it's all sealed. So I don't know if it's the tip on this or something else, but like, that looks terrible. Awesome.
Now, lucky for me, I actually took that can back to my Sherwin-Williams store, and they said they have a lot of issue with those nozzles, so they just gave me a full refund, and I got some normal roll-on primer, and I just went back to work. So I primed all the MDF on the inside here, and I primed over top of those Bondo bits right here. So I just came back. Yeah, I'm kind of doing the same thing. So I think at this point, some of this trim has like 4 or 5 coats of paint on it. I just don't have the right flow yet for doing trim, and it's something I'm still trying to figure out. But yeah, basically went over the Bondo, went over any spots I sanded through, and now I won't have any flashing when I go in with my final coat of paint.
So it is Remembrance Day in Canada, which means we get a day off. And that means the good thing for me is it's getting dark here by 4:30, which means anytime I can do painting in the daylight, I have to take advantage. So the 2 things I want to get done today, number 1 is going to be repainting all the trim. So now that we've gone through, we've caulked all the seams. I didn't get a lot of footage of me caulking the seams, only because I was doing it with my wife and she doesn't really help me a lot. So instead of trying to film or do anything like that, I kind of just took in the moment and enjoyed it. So anyways, we're going to add 1 more layer of paint to all the trim. That'll be, the trim will all be done at that point. It'll be fully done. And then after that, in the next video, I can go back over and basically tape it all out. And that way, instead of cutting in all the trim, I want to try just taping all the seams and kind of going over it light. And so again, that'll be another time. So we'll do that. And then the other thing is the doors. So the doors I painted last night, and there's some drips. My first time using my new sprayer on those, on something that big, so I got some drips. So I'm going to sand the doors down and add a really light coat to all the doors, and that way the doors can cure overnight. This can cure, and that's all I need to get done today. Let's do it.
Now, the nice thing about doing the walls and the way I did it is where I'm painting the walls second, I can make as big of a mess as I want with the trim paint. So I basically caulked all the seams, and then I brushed it in really hard here to make sure all the trim is completely done. And then just to be safe, I put an entire fresh coat over all the trim. So yeah, some of it has like 6 coats at this point in some spots. It was a little bit of a mess, but today, essentially what I'm trying to do is get the trim completely done. So that means go back, caulk all the seams, do the final coat of paint on all the edges, go back, do a little brush, go over where I had all the nail holes. The nice thing here, I don't have to do any masking or taping because I only put nails on the top third. So just touch up the top part of these baseboards, work my way around the room. And again, this bedroom stuff is really hard. I didn't expect it to be this challenging because you have a bed, you have a dresser, you still have to be able to use this room every day. I'm just happy this one's done.
Here's some of the stuff I have to fix. So see how there's that little, that kind of drip there, that there. There's like a little right there. This one's really bad. There's that. Just a couple drips to go over.
So because spraying is new to me, I try to give myself the best chance of success on the second coat. So basically went back, I sanded everything, and then instead of painting the doors vertically, I decided to lay them down and paint them horizontally. And that way, if I do have any drips, if I go a little too heavy on any of the spots, over time, it should flatten itself out. So the reason I got those drips is because I put on too heavy of a coat and I had them stood straight up. But now that they're down, it laid the paint nice and flat. Now here's where we end this video. So here's the trim. This is as far as we're getting in this spot. Trim's all good, trim's all painted, all the touch-ups are done. Yeah, it kind of looks like shit here, but that's because we're going to paint it next, and it doesn't have to be perfect, especially around those baseboards, because we're going to cover it with another coat of paint, another coat of tape. So yeah, looking at this, it looks a little rough from here, trust me, but here's the final breakdown. So overall cost, I spent about $200 on trim for all the baseboard, for all the door casing, and all the window casing. I spent about maybe 25 bucks on paint because I only use like a quarter gallon, and it's a super paint, so it's really cheap. And then nails, supplies, some other little stuff, maybe a tube of caulk, $8. Call it all in, maybe 230 bucks.